Welcome to Don't Fear the Weight podcast with your host Vicky Masita, bringing together science and personal experience.
Hi guys, welcome to the next episode of Don't Fear the Weight podcast. I am your host, as usual, the tiny titan, Vicky Masita. I never change, I'm always the one introducing it, which I might have to kind of mix around sometimes just to make it a little bit more interesting. But enough about me. What we're going to do tonight is that I'm really excited. We've got a pro natural bodybuilder by the name of cwTeamwilson. Hey Cliff, how are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
No worries at all. Now, Cliff, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I know that a lot of people are aware of you, especially with your social medias and those striated glutes that are very, very famous at the moment. So for anybody who doesn't know you or they've been living under a rock in the natural bodybuilding scene for the last 5 years, just give us a little bit of a background about who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I am a professional natural bodybuilder. That was last year that I turned pro. For a while, though, I'd say I've been more well known as a coach than a bodybuilder. I've been coaching. I coach only bodybuilders, which is kind of strange because a lot of people that do work in some coaching capacity, they may work with competitors and general population. But for some reason, I just clicked a lot better with competitors. So I've been full-time bodybuilding coaching since 2011. It's been my full-time job. So everybody, it's always difficult to explain to people what I do for a living. They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I coach bodybuilders. And so I've been pretty fortunate to work with some really good athletes over the years. And I've had quite a few competitors turn pro and do well on the pro level as well. So, that's pretty much my life revolves around bodybuilding.
Fantastic. And it's absolutely awesome that you've turned your hobby and your passion into your line of work as well, because you just never have to feel like you're going to work again, do you?
Oh, absolutely. It's always kind of funny because I have to laugh. When I first started coaching, it was just part-time. I was doing, just a regular job like everyone else. And I told my wife, I was like, who knows? Maybe we can start making some of our income from this. I was just doing it for free in the beginning, and I never really thought I would end up making this my full-time job. It seems too good to be true, actually.
You're still living in that kind of land of Walter Mitty, thinking, no, it's not right. But yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's brilliant. You've made some quite formidable transformations. I've seen some of your girls and your guys that have got on stage and they've got into some immense condition, some of the best conditions that I've ever seen. And people are thinking that natural bodybuilders can't get that kind of condition, but actually you prove them wrong, which is brilliant. And that's one of the first things that I really wanted to discuss. I saw a post that you put out not so long ago stating that you had one of your girls on stage. And you actually, how am I supposed to explain it? When she came to you and she wanted to do a show, you basically said, let's take a year out. Let's work together for a year first, and then we'll do a show next year. So that makes you very unique in the industry, because a lot of people who go to coaches and say they want to coach, they want to compete this year, their coaches just kind of go, yeah, okay, fine, we'll coach you, and then we'll see what happens, and then they get on stage and they're not their best, and then they're disappointed, and then they blame the coach and the process, and et cetera, et cetera. So what makes you very confident to just kind of say, do you know what, just back off for a bit and let's go through a different process?
Yeah, it's funny because only a few years after I was into coaching did I realize that my process in that manner was a little different from what other people were doing. And I guess I should start by saying the people that I work with are usually some of the most motivated individuals that you'll ever find. Their goal isn't just to get on stage and have fun. While they do have fun doing this, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to go up there and have a good time. They want to get on stage and just, whatever their best is, that's what they want to achieve. And so I need to start by saying that, there's a distinct difference between somebody that just wants to do a show and just kind of go up there and see how it feels. Can you hear me? Okay. So with that in mind, I will say it comes down to standards. I have what I would say I try to instill in a lot of my clients is that we have a certain set of standards that we're going to be working with. Standards in how we approach our day-to-day activities that will make us better, and then ultimately a standard in terms of how we're going to allow ourselves to get up on stage. And so I always ask them, I say, do you want to get up on stage at less than your best? And a lot of people will say, I don't mind, that's okay. I'll get up on stage at less than my best. And I say, that's cool, I understand that. Then I'm probably not a coach for you.
Right.
And I'll send them to somebody else that, maybe under, but my take on it is it's not good for anybody in this process if I let them get up on stage less than their best. Because one, for them, anybody who's ever stood on stage at less than your best, that is not a fun experience. Even if you think it'll just be for fun, when you're standing on stage and oh, I could have been better, that's just not fun. That's not fun at all.
No, absolutely.
And so, yeah, and so there's left with a lot of what if, and what if I had done this, what if I had done that, and you just have a lot of regret when you're standing on stage knowing you can be better. So they're not going to, I know, even if they don't know it, I know they're not going to enjoy that process as much as they really could. So if it's one of their first show or two, it's going to put a bad taste in their mouth for competing. And then if they're doing it later, that's not going to give them an accurate representation of what they're capable of and also what I'm capable of as a coach. You know what I mean? If we just try to rush it. So I always kind of take the approach of I'm not going to coach somebody unless there's adequate time to get them on stage at their best. And actually one of the biggest parts, my assistant, his name is Dan Feeney. He helps me a lot because, as you talk to Dan, he helps me a lot because one of the biggest parts of who I'm going to take on as a client is who is willing to wait the time. Because a lot of people say, what do you charge for a 15-week prep? And I'm like, well, I can give you that price, but I don't know if you can be ready in 15 weeks.
Sure.
And so a big part of it is how many pounds, it's a big part of the process of analyzing their pictures. If they've done a show before, what do they look like at this weight? What do we think they're going to need to be? Is there enough time to get it done? And then I give the recommendations from there. And you can really spot a lot about somebody, about whether or not they're willing to wait.
Yeah.
And one thing I always say is that determination and desperation look eerily similar.
Don't they? But they're so two completely different things, right?
Yeah, people that say they want it now, I want it now. I want to do this show now. I want to do really well now. They think that means they want it more than the next person, but that's not always really the case that they want it more. Wanting it now usually means you just aren't willing to wait for it, and that could be a problem. Did I lose you?
Damn it. There you go.
Oh, you there?
And we're back. Honestly, silly thing. I was just speaking to my tech guy, my husband, who does all of this, and he says that it might be some kind of glitch when we're talking to people around the world, but I'm really not sure because I don't know why it does it, but there you go. So, so sorry, carry on. So, just pick up where we left off, basically. So you were talking that you can see a lot between determination and desperation.
Yeah. I always kind of find it interesting how people, that want it now, they mistake that for thinking they want it more, where they say, a lot of times people will tell me things like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win this show now. I don't care if I have to grind myself into the ground to be ready for the show, I'll do it. And they think that that's a good thing, because they think they're expressing to me how badly they want it. But the thing is, in my perception of it, they're not willing to do the one thing that it'll actually require, and that's wait.
Yeah.
And so, that's usually a problem. When I hear somebody that, and you develop an eye for it over time, where, you've worked with a lot of people where, a lot of times I've read people's applications. Earlier on in my career, I would say, whoa, this person's really motivated. They want it. And then when you get into prep, you just see that they're struggling all over the place because they can't be patient at all. So it definitely becomes a trained eye to distinguish desperation from determination.
That's it, isn't it? So how do you actually approach the subject then when you say it to people? Because I've had some people come to me as well. And what irritates me the most is that when I look at somebody and I say exactly the same thing as you and say, actually, I really don't think you're going to be ready this year because of X, Y, and Z, and explain my reasonings behind it. A week later, I see their pictures on social media from another quote-unquote cereal box coach who has taken them on, and then they start grinding them into the ground, like you were just saying, dropping the hammer 16 weeks out or 12 weeks out or whatever. And then you get them coming back to you saying, this coach has started using this protocol and dropped my calories to 1,000 and I'm doing 2 hours of cardio a day. Do you think it's right? I mean, do you get that as well?
Yeah, and it's changed, and you are absolutely right. It's kind of funny because, it's changed over the years as, and I think I made a post about it recently too. The way people approach me when they come for coaching has drastically changed over the last, 4 years as, I've gotten more of a reputation for coaching. But it was always so funny to me how people would be like, they would come to me and they'd be like, I think you're the guy to get me where I want to go. I'll do whatever you say to be ready. And then I say, okay, that's great. I think you need to wait a little longer. And then they're like, well, screw you. Yeah. I'll prove you wrong. And I'm like, you just said you trust whatever I say. Yeah. But no. And so, a lot of times they will go to a coach. And so one thing I guess I want to make clear when it comes to can you be ready or how hard you should be pushing at a certain number of weeks out, I think there's a big distinct difference, because I also get some people that will say to me, my coach has me on an hour of cardio a day, and I'm only on 1,200 calories at 12 weeks out, which seems extreme on the surface. But a lot of times I don't know, did they get there gradually? You know what I mean? Did they get to that point gradually? And I say, well, if you're 12 weeks out and you're not losing weight on 50 minutes of cardio, and you're not losing weight on 1,400 calories, and you're actually doing all that stuff, then your coach had no choice. He or she has to cut the calories and add cardio, because, it's like, wow, that seems extreme. Some people, I think we've all had those clients where, they just have terrible metabolic rate and they just need to go to those extremes. But there's a distinct difference between being 12 weeks out and being at an hour of cardio a day and 1,200 calories, but you've gotten there gradually, as opposed to being 12 weeks out and going from 3,000 or 2,500 calories immediately to 1,200. Yeah. Because, or going from no cardio to an hour a day. A lot of times, a lot of the negative, not just physical, but mental side effects you see will come from drastic changes rather than gradual changes. And physically, particularly for natural bodybuilders, you're going to just not look as good, because the faster you lose weight, the more muscle tissue you are going to lose in the process. And you're just not going to look very good on stage.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when people do come to you and say, my coach has got me on this, are you quite happy to give them the advice, or do you just kind of say, well, you didn't want to wait? So
Yeah, I always I have a rule. I never comment on another coach's methods.
good answer.
Yeah, unless I think someone's in immediate danger. I just say, you need to ask your coach about that, because I don't know what this, I don't know all the details of the situation, and as a coach, I know I don't want other coaches giving their input into what I'm trying to do. I would rather my client come to me and talk about it. But I always just say you need to talk to your coach about that, because I think there are a lot of methods that work, various methods, but usually trying to combine methods, it does not.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that's a big thing. And kind of going back to what you said with your previous question, when you tell somebody they can't be ready and they go to a different coach, if you're going to take the route of telling people honestly what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear, you need to be prepared to lose some people.
Yeah.
And it's, and this is what I was talking about, where I made a post recently. When I first started coaching, I was telling people they need to do things slower. They need to take, a slower approach, prep for longer, be ready earlier, be leaner earlier. I lost a lot of clients. I would bet, if I had to guess, 75% of my clients wouldn't make it to show day.
Wow.
Because the impatience. I was new, and unproven. I didn't have a lot of client pictures, and I think a lot of new coaches will usually tell you that they lose a lot of their clients before they get to show day. They quit for various reasons, whatever it may be. And then obviously my methods have adjusted slightly over the years as I found what works and what doesn't. But the whole approach is pretty similar to what it's always been. And now I would guess 2 to 3% don't make it. I guess, it's probably like 97% that start with me will finish all the way to show day. And the biggest difference is their perception. In the beginning, they weren't sure if I was the guy that could get them where they wanted to go, or if this was the method that could get them where they wanted to go. So if somebody else came along and promised them something better or faster, they would just go on it. Right. But now that I have, a proven track record, a reputation, nobody leaves. And so, I think people are gonna need to realize, if you're going to a lot of times tell people what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear, they're going to lose people. But those people that stick with them and show the results at the end, it will be sort of like a beacon to all other people that are looking to get to that level, that you're the person that can get them where they want to go.
Right. Okay. And that's interesting, actually, with your percentages of drop-offs back then compared to now. Did you find that you had a more or a higher percentage of men that dropped off rather than women, or was it the other way around?
I would say it was the other way around. I found that one thing I found a lot earlier on is that, and it doesn't seem to be this way as much anymore, but a lot of the female clients I would work with would say, well, you don't understand because you're a guy. And and a lot of times I would say, I am a guy, and there are differences between men and women. And I talk about them frequently, in terms of, especially I would say mentality, where they're coming from, because a lot of times men and women come from opposite ends. But, so I would have more women dropping off, but, it's funny because now I don't see as many women going to female coaches when there are some really good female coaches out there. So it started off like that, but now I think over time it's pretty much equal at this point.
Yeah. So why do you think then that's the case? Why do you think that women aren't actually going to female coaches? Obviously, this is from my perspective as well, because obviously I'm a female coach.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of like to know that.
Well, I'm sure you've probably noticed there aren't as many female coaches. And I actually think one of the issues with that is, I guess I would say, due to the more Instagram culture we're in now, where the more popular female coaches, me and my wife talk about this all the time, and it is really easy for a female fitness competitor or coach to become massively popular on Instagram for all the wrong reasons.
Yep.
You know, but when a female wants to build her reputation on scientific approach, methods, it doesn't go over very well. A lot of times it's going to be built either through very shallow emotional response or skin, showing a lot of skin. And don't get me wrong, we are in the sport of showing skin. I put pictures up in my posing suit, but I think that there's a big difference between, showing skin for physique progress and showing skin for sexual purposes. And so, I think it's, and if somebody chooses to go that route, I guess I would say, I don't have a problem with it. If they want to do that, that's fine. But I don't think that it really applies to what will create a great leader in a coach. And so, you probably noticed this. Like, I'll even take one of my clients, for example. Her name is Lauren Conlon, and she's a big following. She's a competitor, master's degree, and she has published research. She's a scientist. She's a researcher. And her following, while still really good on Instagram, is a fraction of what some of these other girls are that people, trip over themselves to get for coaching. And while Lauren has definitely been successful, because she takes a more scientific approach, she's not really as popular as some of these other girls. And so I think overall, people already are a little bit of averse to listening to a more practical scientific approach, but they're even less so when it's coming from a female, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had Lauren Conlon on the podcast actually talking about training from a scientific point of view for female bodybuilding and or female, competitors in general, because of her doing the bikini side of things. And it was really, really refreshing to actually speak to somebody with the same kind of scientific approach that I use. Because I'm very scientifically based. Like you just said, even though I've got a good following on my social media, it's, like you said, just a fraction of a girl that bends over so you can see their breakfast at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I don't want to sell my body. I want to sell my knowledge, and that's what's going to help you get to the point where you want to get, not just for a physique competitor or a bikini competitor wise, because I coach general population clients as well. But again, from the general population side of things, they want results here and now. And, they look at me sometimes and they go, well, on The Biggest Loser, they lose 10 pounds a week and I'm only losing a pound. And it's like, yeah, but the biggest losers are training or exercising 8-9 hours a day. They're also super morbidly obese and they're only being fed 800 calories a day. Now, if you want to do that, then, by all means, go ahead. But I'm not going to be responsible for the outcomes of it.
Yeah, and I guess this goes along with, I could probably talk about this for a long time, but I think guys are faced with a version of that. And I've talked to my wife about that before, because I have a pretty good sized social media following, but like you said, it pales in comparison to what some people have. And I've told her before, it would be really easy if I wanted to build up a massive following based upon really easy cookie cutter approaches. I could say, follow my diet plan for 10 weeks and I can just, throw it all out there. I'm not averse to swearing and using foul language when it's appropriate, but, I think the shock value, sometimes people just, swear like crazy just to catch attention. They start fights with other social media personalities to kind of build it up. So I think it comes down to a lot of it is, how do you want to build your reputation? What do you want to be known for? And I did talk with Lauren about this. I obviously things like Instagram and Facebook, while they're not brand new, they're still new-ish. So I'm kind of curious to see the lasting impact of how, people that build their reputations over on the correct things, the things of value, I guess I would say substance and value. I just see over the course of time, while you don't get that explosion of growth, it's going to be very steady and constant. At least this is what I believe. And 10 years from now, what you're offering, people will still want. Whereas people that go for more shock value, they're gonna rise very quickly. But I see there being a significant fall because, if you are building your following based around how much skin you're showing and that's it, but with no substance, there's always going to be somebody younger coming along that's going to show skin. Or if you're going to build your following upon picking fights with other people and pretty much just providing entertainment of the argument, there's always going to be other people arguing and other people fighting. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of important to distinguish when people are trying to build their brand, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that leads us nicely on to your opinion on these one hit or one show wonder coaches is what I like to call them, or the cereal box coaches. So they've basically done one show under the guidance of a coach, regardless of whether it be you, me, or, I don't know, Tom McNally, whoever it is. They do this one show and then all of a sudden they're a coach. I'm going to let you just take the reins on that one and give me your opinion on it before I say anything else.
Yeah, no, and it's such a tricky subject because, and I'm going to put it out there right now. When I started coaching, I don't even want to call it coaching in the beginning. I'm going to say helping people. I kind of fell into it. I didn't go in with the idea that I was going to do this full time. I was actually preparing for a bodybuilding show. And a guy at my gym approached me and said he wanted to do a show, nothing about it. And just kind of, we were like, I'll walk you into it. You know what I mean? I wasn't charging him. I was just helping him. So, I mean, I guess you could say like, I started coaching people after one show, but I guess there's a big difference in where you are touting yourself at being at, because a lot of people, they do one show nowadays and then it's instantly contact me for coaching services. And they put up the perception that they are an expert at what they're doing. And so I do have a problem with that because I think there's a certain level of arrogance that obviously comes along with it, but also delusion, because a lot of people think that once they've done it once, they just know everything there is to know. And so I do have a problem with that. And it's not that you can't help somebody after you've only done one show, but the idea that you're going to, after one show, know it all and just be able to start helping all these people, that's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so, I think overall this sport tends to lack a certain level of humility when it comes to things like that. And I guess the bad thing is, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, I find that the people that would make really, really good coaches, knowledgeable, practical, rational people, they tend to wait too long to get into coaching because they never feel like they're ready. They take the responsibility of helping other people seriously. And they realize the weight of what they're taking on. Whereas the people that would usually make the worst coaches, they don't think twice about diving in. They're just like, I want to do it. I'm going for it. And so and unfortunately, I don't think that'll ever really change because, I just think that it's the nature of these two different types of people. But I overall, I think the biggest thing is if we could just get people realizing and looking at themselves a little more honestly about their level of education. And when I say education, I don't mean, you don't need to have your PhD or you don't need to have, but you just need to know about what you are doing and what you are practicing and what you're prescribing to people. And just overall, a lot more responsibility needs to be shown.
This is it, because it's so much more than just reducing calories and increasing expenditure. It's so much more than just making people hungry, is what I say about comp prep. Because a lot of people that I've seen or that have come to me and saying, my coach is getting me to do this, I've noticed quite often that they are very, very young in the industry. They've only done the one show, and then all of a sudden that they're a prep coach because they've done this. And it's the ones that only use the one method to get somebody from starting point to stage. And that is reduce food, increase cardio. And then it's like, well, I'm not losing any more weight. Okay, so reduce food and increase cardio. And that's all that happens all the way through the prep. And they have nothing that kind of, they have nothing that does mesocycling. They have nothing that changes their nutrition strategy. They have no diet breaks. They have no refeeds, or they don't have any emotional connection with their clients, or their client's psychological connection with food and that kind of thing. So the one method coaches out there, I think, really need to kind of have a little bit of a step back and maybe realize that there is more than one way to get some weight off somebody in a more comfortable way.
And you said it too. The psychological aspect is huge.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, just from a psychological aspect, the way you were before your first contest prep is so different in the way you are after. And you can almost never go back, because you don't, once you have gotten in the mode of tracking every little thing that you eat, for the rest of your life, you can't ever freely, without thinking about it, enjoy a meal like you used to, because you're always kind of like, oh, how much fat's in this, how much carbs, and you can't look at yourself the same way ever. And you need to realize who's going to be able to handle that and how to get them to handle that in the post-show period, because it's kind of built during prep. Because I think we'd all agree, the way we look right now in our off season, 99% of the population would kill to look like we look.
Yeah.
But we look at ourselves compared to what we were in prep, and we're like, oh, geez, we're a shell of ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And even myself, who, I would say I would say I'm pretty good at the psychological aspects and dealing with that with clients. But even myself, I go through it. I had a moment in my last contest after my last show. I got obviously really, really, really lean for my show.
Yeah. And
I was maybe a month post-show, and I was maybe 5 or 6 pounds up, 6 pounds probably. Still had full six-pack. I mean, I was still, by anybody's standards, I was still shredded. I could have probably got up on stage and maybe won some shows looking like I did. And I had a moment where I looked at myself in the mirror and I just thought, geez, you look terrible right now. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with you? You do not look terrible right now. But it's that perception of where you've come from to where you are now. And so, I think that as a coach, you also need to even realize, besides the physiological nutrition, the physiological changes that take place, and you need to manage the nutrition and the training, you also need to be able to make sure that you are appropriately adjusting somebody's expectations and mentalities as they go through this process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really, really important point to bring up, especially for first or second time competitors as well that are going to be coming onto stage. Do you normally always work with seasoned athletes, or are you quite happy and open to people who want to do their very first shows?
I do work with people that do their very first shows, or even people that, still are maybe in the early stages and aren't going to do their first show for a year or two. But I would say I typically with those people, just because at this point, I would want to make sure that I have the time to devote to them. So, it also depends on what my client load is at the time. But also, I have to say that people that are seasoned, that they have the right mentality for this sport. Because they've been there, done that, and they've proven that they're in this for the long haul. So if I take somebody on that hasn't done their very first show, usually it's because I see something in them that tells me they're in this. You know what I mean? They're prepared to do what it takes, both physically and mentally, to get to this point. So I do work with beginners, but usually I'm a little more selective with them in kind of analyzing how they're going to go about, this process.
Yeah, and that's all the way from beginning to stage to then filtering into the off season and beyond, right? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. And while I don't always get to work with somebody for a longer term because of, whatever it may be, financial, some people can't afford to have a coach all the time.
Yeah.
But, I always try to make sure, and there's one thing I always say too with even if it's a seasoned competitor that's, doing their first prep with me, because also, especially first-time competitors or early competitors, they have this, like, once again, that now mentality. And I always just tell them, I'm not going to just destroy them for this first prep, particularly the newer competitors, because I want to set them up to have a great career, not just one great show. And I see this a lot with, I would say, early bikini competitors, first-time bikini competitors, because a lot of times I use bikini competitors as an example because a lot of times they have fewer years of training under their belt before they get on stage. So you may have a girl that's been training for a year or a year and a half only, and she wants to do a bikini show. And okay, let's say in my mind, I think she would look her best at 110 pounds on stage. And okay, I see that she's struggling mentally. She's cheating on her diet, or she just seems tired or run down. In that case, while I say I want everyone to get up on stage at their best, maybe I'll get her down to 113 pounds. So 3 pounds off. Now I could probably just, grind her into the ground to get those last 3 pounds off. But I know that in the long run, that 3 pounds on maybe at a big show, it's not really going to make a difference in her placing to a significant degree. But there's a very good chance it could have a lasting psychological impact on her down the road. And honestly, it could make her hate the sport. Because everyone knows those last 3 pounds are going to be brutal. And so, those are those types of decisions where I think you need to make the call, especially with somebody that's new. And, a lot of times I'll talk it over with them and I'll say, how are you feeling? And, usually, 99% of the time, I'm going to push to get to where I think they would look their absolute best. But if I'm dealing with a first-time competitor without a lot of experience that is expressing to me signs that they are just at their, at the very end of what they can tolerate, I'm not going to push for those 3 pounds that in the grand scheme of things just will not make a difference at their very first bodybuilding show. Yeah,
definitely. I love that. So you're not one of these people who are literally just striving for the win despite of everything else, And I've seen that quite a lot at the moment recently, saying that these coaches are literally just bothered about the trophy. They're bothered about the win. They're not really bothered about the detrimental effects that it can cause to their health, not just physically, but psychologically as well. So I'm really pleased that, that there are other people out there who kind of think, okay, maybe if you're losing your hair, maybe we should just kind of tailor back a little bit rather than keep pushing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is we all like to win. Obviously, it feels good to have, as a coach, it feels good to have your client win. You're invested in it. You want them, but I would even say in my private client, because I have a private client Facebook group, where we kind of, just for fun for us, we keep track of like our class wins for the year and our pro card wins, and it's fun for us to keep track. But while we do that, I always kind of stress to them, the only goal is really to come in at your best. That is absolutely it. The win is kind of out of your control. You can show up to your very best one week and you could take 6th place, or you could show up at your very best the next week and you could win the whole thing. Yeah. And so, and then, if you have somebody at their first show, they get to this spot and win or lose, it doesn't really matter. What's going to matter is, are they improving upon that the very next time they come out? And so, like going back to my example, I have that bikini girl. She's 113 pounds. The next contest prep, she will be more mentally prepared to get to that 110 pounds because she's been through it before. She learned a lot here. She knows where she can improve to get to over here, and then she'll beat that in the very next time. And so it's just a progression of getting better. And if you do that, if you progress both mentally and physically to get better each time you hit the stage, the wins are going to come.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Okay, Cliff, so I know that we are coming up on time here, and I know you're extraordinarily busy, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. So just before we go then, have you got any words of wisdom or advice for people who are going to come up to their first show and things to watch out for?
If you're going into your first show, I would say remove all expectations. Don't get this in your head that you're going to win this award, or you want to make top 5, or you want to take the fitness and bodybuilding industry by storm. Because you know what, things take a really crazy path, and you don't know. Your first show you could do all that stuff. You may not, and you may do great at your first show and terrible at your second show.
Yeah.
It's just, I would say, just remove all expectation and become more process focused rather than results focused.
Oh, I love that. I really love that. And I'm going to actually hashtag that for the podcast. Beautiful.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So very last thing then, Cliff, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they have a look at the pictures of your shredded glutes?
They can follow me on Facebook, of course, if you just search my name, Cliff Wilson. On Instagram, it's at cwTeamwilson. And then you can find me at my website at teamwilsonbb.com.
Fantastic. And that's it from us, guys, then. So thank you, Cliff, so much for giving me your time today. It's been a really, really exceptional talk. I've loved experiencing it with you, and I really appreciate your time. So good luck with everything that you've got in the coming future, and I'm pretty sure we'll catch up very soon. So thank you very much again. And guys, it's goodbye from me for another week, and I'll catch up with you next time. See you, Cliff.
Thanks.